been 3 weeks, so just
All right, we'll do a quick recap as well. So I shall do this as 1 hour session. It's 6:25 Indian Standard Time. So let's call it 6:30. So 6:30 to 7:30 we'll have one session today.
yes,
And we shall talk about the Indian knowledge system and per se, in particular, Chanakya and Arthashastra of Chanakya. That is my primary topic today. And as you see on the view file, it says Chanakya's vision of Bharat and strategic perspectives for 21st century. In the entire presentation that I extend to you all, I have used 3 videos from a serial channel called Chanakya that was made and played in India. So I credit them for these 3 clips that I've used, and I hope they permit me to use these clips. So all due credits to their score and their efforts, and I only, with all humility, use these small clips out of the entire serial for motivation and for free purposes of distribution of knowledge to all the clients across the globe. And it has got no commercial or benefit in any terms of commercials to me or any of the participants that we have today. So with that good note to the creator, let's begin. So when we talk about Chanakya, when we talk about Arthashastra, last time I had covered that Arthashastra is that one document, one book or a text which is available in physical and is a hard fact evidence which is available for us to read from our scriptures and the texts that are available in the ancient Indian knowledge system. Why I say hard fact is because scriptures and texts like Ramayana and Mahabharata in original are not available. Though the existence and evidences of all of them are available in entire Asia, Southeast Asia especially. A large number of countries who follow Ram, Bhagwan Shri Ram and Bhagwan Krishna have the text in different languages and are being used in their cultures. Like you have an Indonesian Ramayana Bali ke andar, you have Thai ka apna, Thailand ka Ramayana. Cambodia has got its own version of Ramayana. In India, we have number of types of Ramayana. But what actually was the Ramayana written by Valmiki? Where is that text? Since the period has so far been in the history that we do not have the original text, but they are available in various forms across the country. And at times people attempt to call Ramayana and Mahabharata as epics, poems, imaginary poems. People call them as mythological figures. They call them mythology. And therefore, the moment you attach the term epic, mythology, myth to any of our historical documents, the connotation starts changing. The moment you say mythology, it includes an imaginary figure, which may or may not be true. But when you actually look at it, evidences of their being followed across the country are all over. And therefore, in my personal analysis, calling them as epics may not be the right terminology. Calling them mythology is not absolutely right. And since they have been connected with our bloodline, DNA, historical evidences, so it will be appropriate to call all of them as historical texts. And anybody who calls them as mythology or epics, I think we should take a firm stand and say, no, it's not mythology. It is a historical fact. It's not an angel came and gave a story and flew away. They have been here, and you find those evidences across length and breadth of the country. So when I bring down the fact to Arthashastra and Chanakya, that was the time when Northern India had a state called Magad. Those days, India had 16 Mahajanpada. That means 16 states, 16 large states. As of India, as of today, India has got 28, 29 states. So those days, almost 2,500 years ago, when I'm talking as per the BCE or AD, that connotation, it is almost 2,500, 4th century BC or 3rd century BC. During that period was the time when Chanakya was on the scene. Now that was the time when in 600 and 500 BC, Buddhism and Jainism had also originated. So Buddhism was in full swing in those days in India. Sanatan Dharma, of course, we existed who followed the duties and responsibilities as part of our dharma, and that continued. And that was the time when Chanakya came on scene. Magad was ruled those days by a dynasty called Nanda dynasty. And Dhananand was the emperor at that time. He was a very cruel emperor, very, very autocratic, very high taxation, very severe punishments, and people were not very happy with him. And that time, this gentleman, Brahmin, Chanakya, or his other names are Kautilya and Vishnugupta, he was teaching in the University of Takshila. Takshila was an international university located at a town called Takshila, and this Takshila is located in present-day Pakistan near Peshawar. Peshawar is one of the cantonments of Pakistan, and next to it you can still see the remnants of Takshila. And the teachers, he was teaching political science there. And the teachers of Takshila were highly revered teachers, highly knowledgeable teachers. So when this gentleman, Brahmin Chanakya, came to know about Magad and atrocities going on in Magad, so he decided to go back and help the society. So from Magad he came to Bihar, present-day Bihar. From Takshila he came to then Magad and present-day Bihar. Pataliputra or Patna was the central place where he came. And he looked around the society, he saw whatever he had heard. And that was true. So he decided to help the society. And in doing so, he started going and meeting large number of groups of people, individuals, intellectuals, all professionals, and so on. And the situation was very grim. So he observed that a lot of teachers and Brahmins were leaving and running away from Pataliputra. They were leaving Magad and going to the neighboring states. So he goes to a couple of their senior Brahmins and he goes, meets and seeks guidance. So here is one small clip wherein he speaks to a senior Brahmin to seek guidance. So enjoy the conversation between two of them.
क्यों तुम व्यर्थ में श्रम करना चाहते हो?
आचार्य, मैं जानता हूं कि अंधकार का साम्राज्य बहुत बड़ा है। सहस्त्रों सूर्यों का तेज उसे नष्ट करने में असमर्थ होता है। फिर भी एक सामान्य सा दीपक अंधेरे से बुझते दम तक जूझता रहता है, इसलिए कि वही उसका धर्म है। मैं जानता हूं कि पाटलिपुत्र में अब शास्त्रों का अपमान होता है, पर शास्त्रों की रक्षा करने का दायित्व किसका है? सत्ता, सामर्थ्य और वैभव ने परंपराओं की अवहेलना की तो क्या आचार्य भी अपनी परंपराओं को छोड़ देंगे जिसकी रक्षा करने का दायित्व हमारे स्कंधों पर है?
नंदों के राज्य में वह भी संभव नहीं है।
क्षमा करें आचार्य, पर क्या नंदों का राज्य अमर है? यदि समस्या का कारण नंद है तो क्या नंदों के पश्चात भी समस्या अपरिवर्तनीय रहेगी? और यदि चुनौती परिस्थिति जन्य परिवर्तनों ने दी है तो क्या उसका उत्तर पाटलिपुत्र से प्रयाण हो सकता है? संभव है कि उन्हें आपके शास्त्रों में आस्था ना हो, इससे आपकी अपने शास्त्रों के प्रति आस्था विचलित क्यों हो रही है? यदि प्रमाणित करना चाहते हैं आप अपने ही शास्त्रों की श्रेष्ठता, तो आपको अपने शास्त्रों के अनुसार जीकर दिखाना होगा। समय के आघात का उत्तर समय के द्वारा ही दिया जा सकता है आचार्य। फिर आप इतने हताश क्यों हैं?
क्या तुम मुझे समझाने का प्रयत्न कर रहे हो?
मैं तो आपके पास मार्गदर्शन की अपेक्षा से आया हूं आचार्य, और अपने स्वार्थ के लिए आपको रोकने का प्रयत्न कर रहा हूं। आचार्य कहेंगे तो मैं चला जाऊंगा, पर इतना अवश्य कहना चाहूंगा कि भाई यदि बल से हो तो निर्बल अपने शास्त्रों की रक्षा नहीं कर पाएगा, और इसके लिए प्रयाण की नहीं पराक्रम की आवश्यकता है। और यदि चुनौती समय ने दी हो तो शास्त्रों ने ही कहा है कि शास्त्र कभी काल बाह्य नहीं होता। दोनों ही स्थितियों में परीक्षा हमारी है आचार्य। हमें शास्त्रों को आधार देना है तो फिर स्थितियों से पलायन कैसा? क्षमा करें आचार्य, पर अपने विश्वास को दृढ़ करने की भावना से ही कह रहा हूं कि शिक्षक किसी भी युग में रणभूमि से भागा नहीं है। फिर पाटलिपुत्र से प्रयाण कैसा? और शास्त्रों की विजय शिक्षक के पाटलिपुत्र से प्रयाण करने में नहीं है आचार्य। शिक्षक का गौरव तो तब बढ़ेगा जब वह एक छत्र के नीचे संगठित होगा और विजयी होगा। वह एक बार संगठित तो हो, फिर वही राम परशुराम होगा। अब मुझे आज्ञा दीजिए आचार्य। प्रणाम।
So that was the status in Magad those days, and that was the conditions of Brahmins, wherein Shastras were disrespected. And he was very clear that the responsibility of protection of Shastras, all historical documents, all the documents by which we all are governed in the society, they should be protected. And the teachers are the one it is whose responsibility to protect them and uphold dharma, spread the awareness in the society, do good for society. So with that perspective, let's get on to the session. I had covered this earlier. I shall give you a historical perspective and then get on to how it can be relevant today. The entire text that I'm covering may go over a number of sessions, but I'll attempt to maybe cover it in 2 or 3 parts today and maybe 2 more sessions hereafter, so that you are able to understand. And I don't wish to hurry it up so that you only escape through or go through the major headings. Maybe that I wish to dwell on certain concepts which you all can apply in your personal lives in Canada and benefit out of it. And not only in Canada, but across the world. Anybody who's watching this, it is of benefit to all of us as humanity. So let's see the historical perspective. I had given you a context of the text, given you a prelude to that. And once again, I welcome all the participants for this session. Last time there were very enthusiastic participants. Today, I'm sure how many are there, Sharmishka madam? We can see.
There were 7 today.
One, yeah, and I think the same number last time. So that's a very good number to begin with, and I'm sure it will swell as we
Yes.
go by and talk about our own systems in ancient India. 2 things that I'd like to make clear: that it has got no emotions as we talk. They're all hard facts that I shall be talking. Whatever I say will be logical, and there is no connect with any religion per se, because those days only Varna Vyavastha existed. There was no religion called Hindu, or Buddhism, of course, had just come in, but it was all more of Sanatan, more of the humanity, and the entire society was based on Varna Vyavastha. Varna Vyavastha means you choose the profession that you want, and not you choose the profession that you inherit. So if you recollect, Bharat, those days, we have had 4 yugas. First yuga was Satyug, then was Treta Yuga. Treta Yuga is the yuga of Ram. We all know it. And Dwapar as the hero was Lord Krishna. And beyond that, if you come closer home, let's talk about Chanakya's period, and just before that, the rule of Nandas. So northern India was part of Magad Empire, which was ruled by Nanda dynasty. Dhananand was the king in 323 BC. And when Dhananand was ruling, and as I said, his rule was very autocratic and very, very unruly, or very difficult times people were going through. So when Chanakya, you see, I'm taking my cursor to Takshila. This is Takshila, where present day Pakistan is there. Peshawar is also there. So he was teaching here. So from there he came to Pataliputra and he was working here in Magad. Seeing that empire, when he started working in the society, very soon he was summoned by the ministers of Dhananand and he was warned. He was warned not to do any activity which is against the king. Otherwise, he will be punished. Irrespective of the summons and warning, he continued to work. And he was invited to the court along with other Brahmins. And there was a Dana Dakshina to be given by the emperor to all the Brahmins. And when Dhananand came to know that Chanakya is a Brahmin who has been teaching in Takshila, so Dhananand told him, "Hey Brahmin, that you've been teaching in Takshila, why don't you share some knowledge with us?" So when he shared some of those facts of governance and how governance should be carried out, it was not liked by the king, and king insulted him badly and he was thrown out of the court. So when he was thrown out of the court, that's the time he takes a vow. He says, right, since the rule is atrocious and the people are suffering, I will create an empire where rule will be for the benefit of the people. Welfare of people will be primary motive. And I will create my own empire. I'll create my own king. And that is how he started a search for a suitable boy who would become a king. So he had selected two boys. One was Pabata and the other was Chandragupta. And out of them, he conducted a lot of experiments, a lot of competitions, and ultimately he selected Chandragupta Maurya. And then he trained him for almost 7 years. He had to run away to forest to raise the king, to create the army, to raise the army. He was a Brahmin, and if you all know that Brahmins live on alms, bhiksha par jinda rehte hain. So early in the morning they would go, they would seek food from the villagers, come back and they utilize that food for the day, and rest of the time they will teach the children, work for the society and so on. By last light of the day, they would consume whatever bhiksha is left, and if some more food is left, they used to distribute it to other needy people in the society. So by the time he goes to bed, he had absolutely nothing other than his robe on his body. He had nothing else. So was the case with Chanakya. So he was a Brahmin with a robe on his body and nothing else. All that he possessed was the knowledge, wisdom, what he had studied and what he could contribute to the society. So with no resources, no economy, no salary available with him to be given to soldiers, when he set out to create an empire, you can imagine the Herculean task that was ahead of him. All soldiers whom he would recruit will need salary. Where does he get the salary from? So he befriended a son, one of the sons of Dhananand himself, and got a lot of gold coins. And he used those gold coins, took them to forest, made seals or the coins. If you had seen on my first slide, bottom left side, there were two seals. Those seals were of Chanakya's time. He had created those seals and used them as coins, as money to be given to anybody who did something for him. So this way he created an army, created a king, and then he launched a offensive against Dhananand. Now Dhananand was one of the most powerful king. It was not easy to oust him. And in the first battle that he fought, they were defeated badly. And they came back disheartened, demotivated, and didn't know what to do. So when they were resting at some place in the night, Chanakya heard a lady in the nearby hut talking to his son. She had just poured hot porridge to the son in the plate, and son wanted to eat that hot porridge immediately and put his hand in the center of the porridge, and his fingers got burnt. So the lady told him, कि hey son, don't be a fool like Chanakya and Chandragupta. Don't go in the center of the food when it is absolutely hot. If you start licking from the sides, keep cooling it and keep eating it, it will be better. And had Chanakya done this, had he aligned with the people in the neighboring areas and then gradually started capturing, maybe he would have succeeded. When Chanakya heard this story, he realized his mistake, that he had attacked the power center directly without having adequate power. So he changed his strategies and gradually started capturing and winning over the neighboring states, neighboring people, and then garnering the strength. And by the time Chandragupta Maurya rose to his prowess, the entire North India, from Kandahar to almost Myanmar, Kandahar is here in Afghanistan. You can see Afghanistan and part of Iran, present-day Iran, were part of Bharat, part of Chandragupta Maurya's empire. At the east, you can see Bangladesh, and up to Myanmar, this area was with him. So that's the rise of Chandragupta Maurya under guidance of Chanakya. Now, while all this was happening, and one of the stories of how he was summoned and warned in the court of Dhananand, here's another clip for all of you to listen and enjoy. Chanakya has been summoned by the king. This gentleman whose back is towards us is the senior minister called Mahamantri in the court of Dhananand, and he invites and speaks to Chanakya. Kindly enjoy the conversation.
प्रणाम महामंत्री। आपने मुझे यहाँ बुलाया महामंत्री?
आचार्य विष्णुगुप्त, मैं आचार्यों का सम्मान करता हूँ और तक्षशिला के आचार्यों का विशेषकर, इसलिए मैंने सम्मान पूर्वक आपको यहाँ बुलवाया। अन्यथा मेरी सूचना आपको मेरे सेवक भी दे सकते थे।
यदि यह सम्मान योग्यता के कारण है तो मैं इसे स्वीकार करता हूँ, अन्यथा इसे मैं अस्वीकार करता हूँ।
आचार्य विष्णुगुप्त, मैं आपको सावधान कर रहा हूँ। यदि आपके आचरण के कारण मगध का अहित हुआ तो आपके साथ भी कठोरता पूर्वक व्यवहार किया जाएगा।
इसका निर्णय कौन करेगा महामंत्री कि मेरा आचरण मगध का अहित कर रहा है?
विष्णुगुप्त,
यदि आपके मगध के प्रति निष्ठा आपको बाध्य करती है कि आप मगध की संकुचित राजनीति का हित करने वालों से कठोर व्यवहार करें, तो मेरी इस धारा के प्रति निष्ठा मुझे बाध्य करती है कि जो जो इस धारा के हित में बाधक हो, कंटक हो, उनके साथ मैं कठोरता पूर्वक व्यवहार करूं और आवश्यकता पड़ने पर उनका विनाश भी।
आचार्य विष्णुगुप्त, आप अपनी जननी के साथ द्रोह कर रहे हैं।
पाटलिपुत्र मेरी मातृभूमि नहीं है और नहीं है वह तक्षशिला, नहीं है वह मगध और नहीं है वह गांधार। हिमालय से लेकर समुद्र पर्यंत भूमि का कण कण मेरा है और उसे अपनी गौरवशाली मातृभूमि कहने का मुझे अधिकार है और मुझसे मेरा वह अधिकार कोई नहीं छीन सकता। एक राष्ट्र जीवन में व्यक्ति माँ के गर्भ के साथ साथ एक संस्कृति के गर्भ से भी जन्म लेता है और जिस संस्कृति के गर्भ से मैंने जन्म लिया है उसका नाम है भारतीय। जिस धरा पर मैंने जन्म लिया है उसका नाम है भारतवर्ष। दुख है मुझे कि मुझे आपको और राज्य निष्ठा के अंधों को स्मरण कराना पड़ रहा है कि नंद वंश मगध नहीं और मगध नंद वंश नहीं। दुख है मुझे कि आप जैसे विद्वान पुरुष भी जब जब अवांछनीय राजकुलों पर संकट आता है तब तब उसे राज्य संकट अथवा राष्ट्र संकट की संज्ञा देते। महामंत्री, मैं फिर एक बार आपको स्मरण कराता हूं कि नंद वंश मगध नहीं है। मगध इस राष्ट्र का एक अभिन्न अंग है और यदि विष्णुगुप्त चाणक्य राष्ट्रद्रोह करे तो वह मृत्युदंड का भागी होगा। और यदि आप जर्जर हो रहे नंद वंश का पतन नहीं देख पा रहे तो उसे मगध के हित की संज्ञा मत दीजिए महामंत्री। और यदि फिर भी आपको लगता है कि मैं अपनी जननी के साथ द्रोह कर रहा हूं तो एक दिन आपको अपना व्याकरण भी बदलना होगा। और जाते जाते विष्णुगुप्त चाणक्य इतना कह जाता है कि जो जो इस राष्ट्र की एकता व उत्कर्ष के मार्ग में बाधक हुआ वह नष्ट होगा, उसका विनाश करूंगा मैं। और जब तक मैं पुनः इस राष्ट्र को गौरवशाली नहीं देख लेता तब तक संभालो स्वयं को महामंत्री। प्रलय का आगमन हो रहा है और इस बार स्वर्ग के देवता भी उसका मार्ग नहीं रोक पाएंगे।
So that was the kind of conversation that went about with them, and both were equally harsh and warning each other. But this Brahmin, with no resources with himself, had decided that the rule of cruelty has to move out of Bharat. And he was very clear that Takshila, Pataliputra and the area around is not anybody anybody's intellectual property right on landed property. In fact, each and every corner of India belongs to each and every citizen of India. And all of us have the right to claim it. And therefore, if any individual, any mantri or any Raja who claims that he is the owner of this land and he can do what he wants, he is mistaken. He says, who's supreme? Supreme is the Dharma. Supreme is the Shastra. Shastra is the book of knowledge which talks good for humanity, doesn't talk ill of humanity. And if a king talks about the ill of humanity, he has to be thrown out. So he is absolutely very, very clear that the times have come when the king and the ministers of Bharat, Dhananand and all his ministers must do work for the society and not work only for themselves. And because they're doing it, so he will take arms against the king and will do everything possible to throw the kingdom out and install a new king. I told you how he selected the king and grew the king and gradually started biting the Magad Rashtra from one corner. And by the time Chandragupta Maurya completed his tenure of almost 24 years of rule, entire North India was with them. So imagine the policies that were used by Chanakya that were applied by Chandragupta Maurya, they could create that kind of kingdom. So what were those principles that he used? What were the concepts that he applied? They are all given in a book called Arthashastra. So before he was preparing the king and training him to become the king, he wrote that book, Arthashastra, and administration, politics, governance, foreign policy, etc. Everything is given in that. And you can imagine how strong was the concept and its application. That son of Chandragupta Maurya, his name was Bindusar. He was even more aggressive than his father. He extended the empire even further. So Magad expanded. And Samrat Ashok, whom we call as Ashoka the Great, was the son of Bindusar. And look at the pink color. This is the entire empire that was created by Ashoka. So one is that you can imagine the strength and the power of the king he himself must be possessing, and ability and capabilities that he created within his kingdom. The second is, imagine the strength of the concept by which Ashoka extended the empire, and just application of concepts. So if those concepts were applied 2500 years ago, and they could create such a huge Rashtra, which was based on the principles of welfare of people, can we do it today? Yes, I think that's possible. Whether possible or not, we shall discuss as we go by. But suffice to say that Ashoka created this huge empire. And I have only two differences of opinion with Ashoka the Great. One is that when he became the king, he killed his brothers to become the king, which has been rarely seen in ancient Indian history. The second is he adopted Buddhism. I have nothing against his adoption of Buddhism as his own personal religion, but he gave away the principles. He followed ahimsa, and Chanakya was straightway factual and taking decisions for good of the people, and if it warranted punishment, physical punishment, so be it. So Ashoka stopped following the principles of Arthashastra, and as a result, soon after Ashoka's time, the entire Magad as a Rashtra withered away. It got disintegrated. And again, small kingdoms and small kings came about. Imagine if we had continued as one integrated nation since then, we would have been one of the best welfare state today. Nevertheless, our civilization still carries on. The concept of welfare of people still continues. Those ethos, those ethics, those principles are still in vogue. I have drawn my strength from these three books and many more books that are available on Arthashastra. Kautilya's Arthashastra book given in the center was written by R. Shama Shastri way back in 1905, published in 1915. And this is the original translation of Sanskrit based Arthashastra into the English. And the moment it was translated in English, it was translated by many authors across the globe in many languages. So see the power of the Shastra. They are also available in Hindi, Sanskrit, and other languages. There were other scholars and researchers like P. Ganpati Shastri and Professor R.P. Kangle from Bombay University. They worked extensively on this. What we have today is only half of Arthashastra available with us physically. But R. Shama Shastri and his father, R. Shama Shastri was a librarian in Mysore Library. So he came to know that the Arthashastra in original form is existing somewhere in Tamil Nadu. So he, along with his father, went there. They went to Tanjore and met the Brahmin who had this original copy. So they requested and got the original copy of Arthashastra. It is still lying in Mysore Library. So any one of you visiting India, I urge you to visit Mysore, go to the library and have a look at the original version of Arthashastra that we're talking of today. The Arthashastra was in two parts. So the second part is available in Mysore Library. The first part somehow has not been found. Arthashastra has been missing in India between 8th and 12th century, and it is supposed to have come back from Europe in the 18th and 19th century and was located in Tanjore. So first part of the Arthashastra is still missing, and regrettably we have lost this original part of the Arthashastra, first part of it. You may like to read them, enjoy them, and anyone wanting them, I have the PDF copies. I'm open to sharing them. Let's go through the Arthashastra. Arthashastra per se is a threefold strategy containing book. The first aim of Arthashastra is Raksha, or protection of people. The protection of people and protection of the boundary of the state are the two aspects under Raksha. So it applies at individual level, it applies at national level. At individual level, we say a child has to be protected. बच्चे की रक्षा करना माता पिता का धर्म है. Now, raksha alone or protection alone doesn't help. You protected the child, but the child needs to be fed. The child needs to be given education. He or she needs to be given culture. And therefore, similarly, a nation has to be protected. The territory has to be protected. The people living in the nation, they have to be protected. So that is the connotation of Raksha when it comes to Arthashastra. Palana is looking after the child, looking after the people and the territory of the nation overall. So it means that not only protecting, but giving culture, education, helping the child to grow is the essential duty of the parents. Similarly, it is the duty of the king to look after the people of the country. He has to not only feed them, but he has to give them culture, he has to give them education, he has to look after them, he has to grow them. And in any case, they have to be protected from threats. And therefore, geography again has to be looked after. And the third aim is Yogakshema. Yogakshema means one for all and all for one. That means it is not only looking after, feeding and giving culture to people, it also includes growth of the people, growth of the nation. In our personal context, the child has to be grown and the flower has to bloom. The caterpillar has to become butterfly. So is the case with the entire nation. The people must flourish. That is the ultimate aim of a rashtra, or a nation. So Yoga Kshema is what he attempted to achieve, and all along the concepts are around this word Yoga Kshema. Please remember, Chanakya is not about war fighting, killing and all that. It may be a perception carried, but Chanakya always and always worked towards welfare of the people. If the people grow, if people flourish, if borders are safeguarded, then automatically the nation will flourish. So the corollary is very clear. Corollary, Yogakshema is equal to welfare of the people, is equal to growth of the nation. Take it in any field, whether it is social, political, economic, science, technology, whatever. Then Arthashastra is a science that talks about internal and external administration of the state. It is primarily a standard operating procedure book for the king how to govern the state. It is that statecraft that talks about how politics must be maintained, how administration should be enjoyed, and how diplomacy must work for the growth of the nation. The entire Arthashastra is divided into 15 books. They've got 150 chapters, and there are 6,000 shlokas in Arthashastra. It is appreciated that 4,000 shlokas have been lost as part 1 of Arthashastra. This is part 2 of Arthashastra, whose shlokas are available as of today. I'll give you an example from the book. I've taken this excerpt. Excuse me. This is from book 1, chapter 19. He says, what should be the duties of the king? And he has to follow them. In order to identify the duties of the king and the people, the day has been divided into 8 parts of day and night. And each of them is called Nalika. I'm putting my cursor here. It is called Nalika. So day is divided into 8 Nalikas. Each Nalika is equal to present day 1.5 hours. And how they identify Nalika is by the shadow of 3 Purushas. That means 36 angulas or inches. Of 1 Purusha, that means 12 inches. Of 4 angulas, that means 4 inches. So if you have this 36 angul, 1 Purush, 4 angula, that shadow created by this length of stick will be equal to 1.5 hours or 1 Nalika. And the king has to go through the activities specified for him for each Nalika. In Nalika 1, or the first part of the day, first 1.5 hours, he says he will look into the receipts and expenditure. Look where my cursor is. So the first thing he would do in the morning is look at the accounts, finances, and ensure that the state treasury is updated, filled again. He would look into the expenditures to be carried out, rationality of the expenditures to be carried out, and the need of the treasury for poor people in the country, and other expenses for public facilities and governance. So he would first look into is the treasury. And he believed that if treasury is full, he can really look after the people. I'm sure we all work for this. If your and my treasury is okay, pocket is full, you can look after your family. I can look after my family, and so on. The moment there is a challenge to my pocket, I think everything starts going topsy-turvy. So you start running around working, oh, what are my additional means of sources? So did Chanakya do. He would create additional means of sources to keep the treasury filled, to be used for the people, for governments. In part 2, he says in second Nalika, he would look into the affairs of citizens and countrymen. And when he says citizens, the first set of people whom he would hear were the old ladies, widows, disabled ladies. Any atrocity or injustice carried out any of the elderly ladies, those were his first people he would listen to. Then he would listen to elderly men, and then all other classes of society, their cases would be heard. So he was very clear as to what is his priority of listening to the citizens. In the third, he says he will go wash, bathe, and study himself. So every day, king was forced to study and grow his own knowledge. Imagine, those days even king had to study everything under the guidance of Chanakya, so that he improves his abilities and is able to contribute to the society better. Should we do that? As elderly, sometimes we feel, हो गया, अभी क्यों पढ़ाई करना, अब बच्चों को करने. But I don't think that's the right way to look at. Irrespective of your and my age and stage, learning is a continuous process. But the question is, where is that 1.5 hours that you have put for yourself and I have put for myself, when every day you and me will improve our capabilities, learn something new? What is it new that I can contribute to the society? If the king could, if Chanakya could, why can't you and me today? We all do it in our own essence. We do someday, one or the other manner. Then he says he would attend to, after his studies, he would come and speak to the ministers. He would speak to the information system in his country. That means he would speak to all the ministers, all the departments, and take update on how's the administration going. He would also speak to the spies, information systems, and get updated on who in the neighborhood countries and states, who's doing what. And he had a very, very elaborate system of spies. The secret system that he says, secret information gathered by his spies. He had roving spies and he had static spies. Roving spies in the guise of Brahmins, Vaidyas, Shudras, disabled people, would go around within the state and outside the state to gather information. Because this information, if anyone was doing anything against the country, the cognizance has to be taken. And the entire system was unlike China, wherein the CPC rules and everything is strictly controlled. In case of a welfare state, the issue was primarily related to the welfare of, yes, thank you, Sharmishta madam. You are absolutely right when you say that all forms of governance must use must use the Chanakya. There is just no denial. Sometimes we attempt to overlook, thinking that we are modern and our modern systems can work extremely well. But there is no harm in looking back into the ancient text and draw lessons for ourselves. The secret system that he built, let me give it out here itself. The two sets of agents, roving agents and static agents, they would collect information. And information was not to harm or disarm anybody, but it was for the growth of the society. Prevention of corruption, prevention of offensive cases, prevention of atrocities within the society, preventing gundas from doing what they want to do, preventing another neighboring country to attack and capture part of your people. There may be an uprising somewhere. How do you come to know about that uprising? There are malpractices in the trade. The jewelers would adulterate the jewelry. We had a large system of mining, and the Department of Mining was extensively working. So was there corruption in the mining system? Was illegal mining being done? Was it smuggled out, or irregular export-import? Everything had to be controlled, and unless you have a good policing system, good spy system, you cannot control. Unfortunately, you see so much of atrocities, corruption, and irregularities existing today in India and abroad. What is happening in Israel and Hamas, Palestine, is primarily lack of information system, lack of spies working correctly, cohesion by the king in organizing the entire governance. I leave that point aside for a while. Suffice to say that he ensured that his system works as a well-oiled machine and he gets information right. So Gopa in the village was responsible for managing the affairs of the village. Gopa was the village head. And if this system or information that was required attention of Chanakya, it would be immediately sent to him via the hierarchy. Those days there was no internet, no technology. So it was more of physical, and therefore the hierarchy system worked extremely well, and hence the importance of spy system or the information system. Then in the evening, he would work and interact with the superintendents of his forces. The force that he has, armed forces that he had, was Chaturangini Sena. Similar Sena that Bhagwan Krishna had in Mahabharata. So the force created by Chanakya was based on a similar system. And there were 4 elements: Department of Elephants, Department of Horses, Department of Chariots, and the Department of Foot Soldiers. So he would personally look after and ensure that they are looked after, fed well, and there is no disorientation of the army, or to say that there was no dissension amongst the army, because defection could take place any day. And in fact, if at all there has to be a defection, Chanakya ensured that the defection should take place in the neighboring countries, and their soldiers with their horses, with their elephants should come into Magad, because the life in Magad was so good. Soldiers were so well looked after. So everyone wanted to come to Magad and live there. But you can't invite everybody there. So he had to ensure that a system is there, and whosoever wants to join, they were welcomed, and he would ensure a system of governance so that whichever state would join them were really looked after. During wars also, if he captured some territory, he would look after the people and not exploit the conquered territory and the people. Those conquered people would then be part of his own Rajya, Rashtra, and they will be looked after and catered accordingly. Okay. So let's go beyond. There's another message. Somebody is talking. Ramesh is written. Yes, it covers affairs of governance, political science, economy, politics, military strategy. Wonderful. I did not know how governing was so well thought of, is documented in Arthashastra. Absolutely true, Ramesh ji. It is amazing to read. In case you have a PDF document of Arthashastra, please open it. Otherwise, I'm open to sharing it. Just glance through it like a novel, and you will realize what wealth lies there. And God willing, all of us would be able to apply this knowledge in our personal life, our professional life, and in the life of a nation. The beauty is, Arthashastra is applicable for a child, it is applicable for an adult, it is applicable for a father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, for a minister, for a kingdom. I wish the cabinet ministers read the Arthashastra in India and even Canada, because it is not a particular geography related. It is specifically related to administration. It is related to foreign policies, and all the countries are attempting to do that. If we are able to do that, I'll show it to you that how it can be really applied to individual lives and for growth of the nations. So first, out of the 15 books that are there, first 5 books talk about Tantra, internal administration. What are the duties of respective people in the society? Who you think of a person, tradesman, and his duties listed. You think washerman is a very isolated, small person? No. The duties of dhobi, washerman, are also listed in Arthashastra, as well as the duties of a jeweler, duties of a minister, and duties of a king. So far as administration is there, duties are across the board. equal for all of us. And they are specified. Now, whatever profession you wish to join, choice is yours. Please join that profession, follow those duties, and enjoy your life. The freedom of enjoying life was yours. Gurukula would decide as you go through the Gurukula, at every stage you will be asked as to what do you want to do. You want to study, you want to go back, you want to do irrigation, you want to become a professional, you want to do a businessman. Things were listed that if you want to become a businessman, please join the cohort of the businessmen. They would train you. Book number 6 to 13, they talk of external policies and how to prepare for war. Some details. Book number 6 talks about constitution of a state. That each state has to be composed of 7 elements. And what are those 7 elements? He says 7 elements as is available in Prakriti. What is Prakriti? Is composed of Panch Mahabhuta. There are 5 primary elements of the nature. So 7 elements of the state has to be connected with the nature, universe, Mother Earth. And any organization, any family or a nation that does not have these 7 components will malfunction. How? I shall tell you later. Book 7 talks about Shad Gunde, 6 gun, 6-fold policy. It is a policy that you can apply at your personal level, you can apply at national level. He says there are 6 characters that a nation must follow to ensure that the peace prevails in the country. The growth continues within the country. How? We shall see as we go in the session. Then a book 8 talks about Vyasanas. Vyasanas means calamities. It could be natural disaster, it could be man-made disaster. And the responsibility of the king is to look after the people and ensure that the calamities do not impact all of us. And if it does, then the treasury of the king must be utilized to help the people in society. Book 9 talks about the invader and preparation for war. That means if there is an invader who wants to come and harm you, what all he can do and what should we do to prevent him from harming us. And in any case, we must prepare for war. So this is what the book 10 talks about. It primarily talks about war. How should an army camp? How should it march? If it has to march through a forest versus through mountains versus through a riverine terrain, how they should march? How should the army be protected in times of distress, dissension, in times of attack by the enemy? What are the measures that the army must take? Forms of treacherous fights. If that happens, how should he prepare the army so that we don't get into a disadvantageous position? And in any case, if a soldier has to fight, he has to be most motivated soldier. You just can't fight. Tell him go and fight. No. America failed in its first attempt in Iraq. Why? Because he said technology will do, soldier go and would do. Palm top instructions would reach the soldiers. No, palm top cannot encourage and motivate a soldier to take somebody's life or to give his life, sacrifice own life. So difficult. And therefore, leadership has to be there. Motivation has to be part of it. He ensured in his Arthashastra that the leader does that. Fight between own and enemy's armies. What kind of battlefields will be there? You heard of different types of arrays in Mahabharata. 18 days of war, 18 different types of arrays, like snakes, like staff, Chakravyuh hoga, Makravyuh hoga, and all the arrays that were applied by various elements of the army. Chanakya applied them here. Book 11 talks about corporations. All kinds of management issues are there in Book 11. So if you are a management expert, if you are a CEO, if you are manager, and if you're dealing with the management of a firm, company, your family, or of a country, this book is for you. Management of different departments, public and private. There were 17 departments in his times. Today we have almost 30 plus ministries in India, Indian cabinet. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of so many. Similarly, he had the departments, and each department had a head. How they would be managed, starting from selection of the head of the department, or call it selection of MD or the CEO, right up to selection, recruitment, and management of each part of the department. How will they interact with the armed forces? How will they interact with the civil society? How will they export, import? Things are given there. And it also talks with how a king and others will interact with spies, because spies were the backbone of the information. The good part is that the spies were not used against each other. So they were used to curb, prevent corruption, and for better governance. Book 12 talks about what in case an enemy is a powerful enemy. Then use a messenger. Use battle of intrigue. Send your wish Kanya and slay the commander-in-chief. Inside circle of state, we will separately talk about separate circle of state. It may warrant itself one full session. Rajmandala theory it is called. How do you manage friendship? How do you make friends with other countries outside? America says national interest will dictate our friends. So there are no friends, no enemies. Our national interest will decide the friends and enemies. Chanakya said it 2,500 years ago in what is called a circle of states or Rajmandala theory. I'll share that in a little while. He had spies with the weapons, with the fire, with the poison to be used against a powerful enemy. And destruction of supplies and stores, granaries of the enemy would impact. Similarly, the complete victory of the enemy should be the target and nowhere short. So if the army has to be applied, it has to be complete victory. Otherwise, he believed that army must not be used. He believed in other forms of governance and no use of force. He believed in a policy called Chanakya Niti. It is called as Upayas. And these Upayas had 4 words, I'm sure all of you know it: Sam, Dam, Bhed, and Dand. These have to be applied, and Dand is the last one. Dand must never be applied. That's what he says. And if you have to overcome a powerful enemy, complete victory has to be achieved, possibly without fight. Right. Book 13 talks about this strategic means to capture a fort. It meant not only a fort per se, but a region, an area. You could call part of a state, an area whichever has dissension, whichever has a challenge. They have to be managed well. In case of enemy's forts, you have to create dissension amongst the enemy so that they defect and come on your side. You don't even have to fight a war. Entice the king by secret means. Instead of fighting, why don't you give an offer to the enemy king who's likely to fight a war against you? And if the offer is good enough, they would have taken it. So Israelis and Palestine, if they had offered good, convincing encouragement or offers to each other, there wouldn't have been a war. But instead, they decided that the fight can be the answer to the problem. Sorry, fight is not the answer. I'm sharing it with my conviction today that this war of Iraq and Palestine will continue for a very, very long time. It has long-lasting impressions because they have not applied upayas. They have not applied Chanakya Niti. Chanakya Niti says, first प्यार से बात तो करो, साम की बात करो, दाम की बात करो, negotiate. Then identify places where you can get information about each other and where you can make collaborations. Collaborate so that you work together to grow. And Dand, Sam, Nam, Bhed and Dand. Dand is possibly the last thing. What they have done is used Dand as the first measure to achieve peace. No, sorry. Just let's see. Fight will only beget fight. Death will beget death. How can a son or a daughter whose father, mother have been killed, will they ever forgive each other? Whether they are from Palestine or Israel? So long as that boy or a girl lives, that hatred in his heart or her heart will remain forever in his or her life. So another 80 years gone. And that boy or a girl who has suffered the loss of their parents and relations today, when they get married, they will tell their children, look, Israelis did that. Israelis will say, look, Palestinians did that. Hamas did that to us. We will not spare them. Gone. 2 generations, 3 generations gone. There cannot be peace. War cannot get you peace. A fight cannot get you love. You try it with your spouse. You try it with your son and daughter. At the outset, you fight. You scold your son or daughter immediately. कि बाद में बात करेंगे, पहले तो मैं तेरे को डांट लगाऊंगा. You see the result? It cannot. It cannot. You have to entice. You have to encourage each other by offers. What are those offers? Sam, Dam, Bhed, and Dand. Dand should be the last one. What does our mother does in the class? Beta, don't do it or I'll give you a 2-finger slap. We have to get out of this thinking. If the Chanakya has to be applied, if Chandragupta Maurya has to be applied, if good governance has to be applied, then encouraging each other and collaborating is the way forward. See the last word here. He says, restoration of peace in a conquered country. So any country which is conquered must become as good, as flourishing as our own country, and not exploitation. People have been exploiting, going and looting and raping and doing all these things in the conquered area. No, that's not the way Chanakya says. Chanakya says you've captured for good of the people, not for killing, not for usurping their resources. We have enlarged the area of our kingdom to help more and more people. Right, book 14 talks primarily about all secret means of actions against the enemy, for governance within the state, for various contrivances, and for injuring the enemy forces. Book 15 talks about the plan of a treaty. That means how the strategies be formulated and how a nation must flourish is given in book 15. I think the time is now 7:28 Indian Standard Time, and it's almost 1 hour. So what I'll do is I'll finish. I've given you an overview of the Arthashastra. So I'll stop sharing. I'm now one-to-one with you. So I've given the overview of Arthashastra as to what is Arthashastra, what was Chanakya, and how Arthashastra should be studied. I've given you how the books are placed and try and glance through. In next session, we shall cover respective policies, each of these policies, so that you all understand how a strategy can be applied for governance within your home or outside your home, and by the countries with their foreign relations and others. I see Sharmishta Madam said it's truly eye-opening knowledge that can be applied to our daily lives and especially important for our governing bodies. It should be mandatory for them to learn this Chanakya Niti. Absolutely, madam. You're so right. It, all of us can switch on our videos for some time. We can interact. We are 6 of us. And all that I wish to connect and say that is this Chanakya Niti or Chanakya per se should not be seen as he is perceived. Chanakya is perceived as a very clever man, a nasty man who would, for his own personal gains, would put others as a disadvantage. No, sorry. Chanakya कहते ना कुटिल था, बदमाश था, चाणक्य मेरे साथ चाणक्य नीति खेल रहा है. That is the perception of Chanakya Niti amongst common masses. But that's not the way. Chanakya Niti is far, far superior, and it covers the overall governance and goodwill and betterment of people. So we can talk more about this. I'll close the session today. If there are any questions, I'll take on the questions and we can interact and talk about whatever anyone of us wants further explanation and talk. Dipti says, thank you to Chanakya Serial 1. Came to know, yes, I read the Chanakya Niti and have entire collection of, wow, wonderful, Dipti. Thank you so much for sharing this. This is a actually golden knowledge bank that you have. You must share with maximum people. Any questions, please? I'm open. If there are no questions, I'll hand over the stage to you, Sharmishta ji. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed. It's been a wonderful session. I look forward to your feedback. I look forward to your feedback, suggestions, and any improvement changes that you want in my contents or method of delivery or anything else that you desire.
It's awesome. As I said, it's really eye-opening. And I'm sure, even though there are few people, a lot of them, they are asking for your, PowerPoint presentations after the thing for whatever the reason they can't join. We had 36 students who joined, but only 6 or 7 of them are being able to attend. But still, I think they are keenly interested, and I'm grateful to all of them. If anyone has a question, we can ask question, or we can wind up and say good night for us and good morning for him. And we are truly thankful that you are talking to us from Assam at 6 in the morning, getting up for us. Truly hats off to you. Anyone, any question? Chandrika, Anju, or Dipti?